scroll to the bottom of this file to our script tags. So right now, we're using 3 script tags to run all of our JavaScript. So this runs all the code in cart.js, and then it runs all the code in products.js. And finally, it runs all the code in amazon.js. So this is basically the same thing as combining all the files together into one big file and then running all of our code. However, there's a big problem with using script tags like this. And that problem is it can cause naming conflicts. So in our situation here, we created a variable named cart in cart.js. This means we can't use the variable named cart in any of our other files. So for example, if we went to amazon.js and then we scroll to the top here, and let's say that we try to create another variable named cart. So at the top, we type const cart equals square brackets and save. And now if we go back to our project, you'll notice that the website stops working. And if we right click, inspect, and open the console, it will tell us that we got an error, and it says that cart has already been declared. So this is happening because we created a variable called cart in cart.js, and then later in amazon.js, we created another variable named cart. Now we can't have 2 variables with the same name in JavaScript, and this causes an error, and it causes our website to break. So this is called a naming conflict when we have 2 variables with the same name. So the big problem with script tags is if we go back to our code, you can see here that it's really hard to tell which variables have been created in other files, and it's really easy to accidentally create a naming conflict like this. So that's the problem with using script tags like this and running our code one file at a time. It's very easy to get naming conflicts. So now we're going to learn how to solve this problem using a feature of JavaScript called modules. So a module basically contains a variable inside a file. So now this variable is not going to cause conflicts with anything outside the file. For example, in our project, we created a variable called cart, and we want to contain this variable inside the cart.js file so that it doesn't conflict with the cart variable inside the amazon.js file. So we can do this using a module. So now let's learn how to create our first module. We're going to go back to amazon.html, and then here, to create a module, we're simply going to delete this line of code that uses a script tag to load cart.js. So we'll delete it and save, and you'll see that the website is working again. So how does this work? When we use a script tag, it will run all the code inside cart.js. So this code will create a cart variable, and this will cause a naming conflict. By removing the script tag, we're no longer running the code inside cart.js. So we're no longer creating a cart variable, and it will no longer cause a naming conflict. So to create a module, we simply do 2 steps. Number 1, we create a file and write our code inside the file. And number 2, don't load the file with a script tag. By doing this, any variables we create inside the file will be contained inside the file, and it won't cause naming conflicts. So that's basically how we create a module. Okay, so now we run into another problem in our code. If we open amazon.js, we created this cart variable as an example, but what we actually want to do is to keep the cart variable inside cart.js because we want to keep all the code that's related to the cart inside this file. So in amazon.js, we're going to delete this code. And if we save and then go back to our project and click add to cart, you'll notice that it no longer works. So let's look at the console again to see what error we get. We'll right click, inspect, and open the console, and it's going to tell us that cart is not defined. So the problem that we have here is that in this file, we're using the variable cart. But now, because we're not loading cart.js using a script tag, the cart variable doesn't exist anymore. It's contained inside cart.js, and we can't access it from the outside.
The global machine learning market is expected to touch $31.36 billion by 2028.
So now we're going to learn how to get a variable out of a file or a module. To do that, we're going to do 3 steps. The first step is to add a type equals module attribute. The second step is to export, and the third step is to import. Let's learn these steps one by one. So the first step is to add a type equals module attribute. We're going to open amazon.html, and we're going to scroll to the bottom. And here in the last script tag, where we load amazon.js, we're going to add an HTML attribute here. So we're going to type equals module and save. So the type equals module attribute basically lets this file get variables out of other files. It basically enables this feature. Now the second step is to export. So we're going to go to cart.js, and now we're going to choose which variables can be accessed outside of this file. So for example, we want to access the variable cart outside of this file. To do that, in front of the variable, we're just going to type the word export and space and save. So now this variable can be used outside of cart.js. The last step is to import. So we're going to go to the place where we're going to use this variable, which is inside amazon.js. And now at the top, we're going to tell the computer which variable we want to get from another file. So we'll type import, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, and between these brackets, we're going to give the name of the variable we want to get, which is the cart variable. And then we'll tell the computer which file we want to get this variable from. So we'll type from, single quotes, and semicolon. And now inside these quotes, we're going to locate the file using a file path. So let's open up our files here, so it's easy to see what files we have. So right now we're in amazon.js, and we want to locate cart.js. So the first step is we actually need to get out of the scripts folder. We're in the scripts folder, and we need to get out of it and into the data folder. So to get out of the current folder that this file is in, we're going to type ... So ... basically represents the folder outside of this current folder, which is this folder right here, JavaScript Amazon projects. And then we're going to type a / to go outside of the scripts folder. So now that we're outside of this folder, we're going to go into the data folder. So here, we're going to type data and then a slash to go into this folder. And we're going to locate the file cart.js, and save. So what this code does is that it's going to take the variable cart out of the file cart.js. And we use this file path here to locate that file. So as a reminder, dot means to go outside of the current folder, outside of scripts, into here. And then we go into the data folder. And then inside the data folder, we find cart.js. So those are the 3 steps to get a variable out of a module. First, we add a type equals module attribute to enable this feature. And then we export the variables that we want to get out. And finally, we import the variables when we need them. Now there's 2 more things that we need to know about modules. Number 1, we have to put all of our imports at the top of the file. And number 2, in order for modules to work, we need to use a live server. So for example, if I open the folder that contains amazon.html, so I open JavaScript Amazon project, and then I select this HTML file and right-click, open with Google Chrome, the website won't work. And that's because modules don't work if we open the HTML file directly like this. So let's close this for now. And to get modules to work, we need to open our code editor, and then right-click the HTML file, and open with live server. So in this course, in order for modules to work, we need to use live server to open our HTML files. So now that we learned how to use a module, let's talk about the benefits of modules. The first big benefit is that it helps us avoid naming conflicts. The only time that this causes naming conflicts is if we import this variable and we have another variable named cart inside this file, like this. So this will again create a naming conflict. If I save this, the website will stop working. But at least now we have control over when naming conflicts happen. They will only happen if we import the same variable name. Now modules have another feature that allows us to avoid this problem as well. So after the variable name that we import, we can type as and then a different name, such as my cart, and save. So this will basically take the import and rename it to my cart, so that this will no longer conflict with this variable name. So as you can see, modules have a lot of features that help us avoid naming conflicts when we have lots of files in our project. So now I'm just going to delete this and put the code back because that was just an example, and save. So the second big benefit of modules is that we don't have to worry about the order of our files. Before, when we loaded everything with script tags, we had to make sure that we load cart.js first because we need the cart variable to be created, and then we can use it in amazon.js. So the order of our script tags really matter, and it becomes really hard to manage when we have lots of files in a big project. But now with modules, we can just import the variables that we need, and we don't have to worry about the order that we're loading our files. So as you can see, modules are a better way to organize our code, especially in bigger projects. So now let's use Git and save our changes. So we'll go to the Git section here, and it will tell us we changed 3 files. In amazon.js, we removed the script tag and added type equals module. In cart.js, we exported the cart variable. And in amazon.js, we imported the cart variable from cart.js. So now let's save these into Git. So here we'll type a message, use modules and import cart from cart.js, and commit. Now that we learned modules, let's use them in more places in our project. So let's close this for now. And we're going to open amazon.html. And next, we're going to turn products.js into a module as well. So we'll start off by deleting the script tag, because the script tag will just load all the code onto the page. So we'll delete this and save. So notice that our website stops working. And now inside amazon.js, we need to access products from products.js. So again, we're going to do 3 steps. The first step is to add a type equals module attribute, which we already have, so we don't need to do this again. The second step is to export the variables that we want to get out. So in this case, we want to get the products variable out of the products.js file. So let's open our files and open products.js, and we'll scroll to the top. So to get the products variable out of this file, in front of the variable, we're going to type export and space and save. And the last step is to import the variable that we need. So inside amazon.js, we need the products variable. So at the top, we're going to type import curly brackets, and then inside here, we're going to type the variable name that we want to get, which is products. And we're going to get this variable from single quotes, semicolon, and then inside here, we're going to locate the products.js file. So we're going to type dot dot and slash to go outside of the current folder, so outside of the scripts folder, and then we're going to go into the data folder. So we'll type data and a slash to go into the folder, and we're going to locate the file products.js and save. So now that we're importing this variable from this file, the rest of our code will work, and our website will start working again. So that's how we turn products.js into a module as well. So let's go into Git and take a look at our changes. So in amazon.html, we deleted the script tag, and then in products.js, we exported the variables that we wanted to get out, and then in amazon.js, we imported the variables that we need from the file. So let's type a message and save these changes. Changes into Git. Import products from products.js and commit.
Guess what? 3 hours. In just 3 hours, I learned how to use ChatGPT and AI tools.
Let's close this, and let's open amazon.html. Now, the last thing is, you might be wondering, should we also delete this script tag that loads amazon.js? And the answer is no, because we still need one JavaScript file to load our code. So this file will import from all the other files that we created. And this is how we organize our code in a real website. So this file is called the entry point. So now that we've seen some examples of modules, we're going to use modules to organize our code better. So let's go into amazon.js. And then we're going to scroll down to the code for the add to cart button. So inside this file, we're going to scroll down here, all the way down to this code here. So this is the code that we run when we click add it to cart. And you'll notice that we're running a lot of code here when we click that button. We're running code that adds the product to the cart, and we're also running code that calculates the quantity and updates the page. So a best practice in programming is that when we have a lot of code here that does different things, it's better to split these up into smaller functions to make our code easier to read. So here, this part of the code takes the product ID and then adds it to the cart. So it makes sense to split this into its own function. So let's scroll up, and at the top here, let's create a function for this code. So we'll type function, and let's call it add to cart, brackets and curly brackets. And then we're just going to move all this code into the function. So we'll select this code, and then right-click, cut, and then inside this function, right-click and paste. And then down here, we're going to run this function inside here. So when we click add to cart, we're going to run add to cart function that we just created and save. So now let's give this a try. So we'll click add to cart, and unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore. So let's take a look at the console to see if there's any errors. We'll right-click, inspect, and then open the console, and it's telling us that product ID is not defined. So if we look at our code here and scroll up in the function, you notice that we're using product ID, but it's no longer anywhere in the function. And that's because product ID is outside the function. So we actually want to keep this code outside because it's using this button. So instead, we're going to take product ID and put it into a function using a parameter. So at the top of the function, we're going to add a parameter product ID. And then when we call this function, we're going to pass it the product ID. So we're going to take this value, put it into the function, and save it in here, and then the function can run as normal. So now if we save, and then go to our project and click add to cart, you can see that it's working again. Next, let's go back and scroll down. And we're going to put the rest of our code into its own function as well to make it more organized. So at the top here, let's create some new lines and create a function. And this code updates the cart quantity on the page here. So let's name this function update cart quantity, brackets and curly brackets. And we'll move this code into the function. So let's select this code and then right-click, cut, and then in here, right-click and paste. And then down here, we'll call the function using update cart quantity, and a lot easier to read. when we click add to cart, it's really easy to understand what's going on. First, we're going to add a product to our cart, and then we're going to update the cart quantity. So now let's save, and then go back to our project and try it out. And you can see that everything is working again. So we're going to do two more things to better organize our code. So let's go back to our code. And the first thing is we're going to scroll up to the add to cart function. And I made a small mistake in the previous lesson. I actually want to rename this parameter from item to cart item instead to make it a little more clear. So we're just going to rename this to cart item. And here as well, rename it to cart item. And save. And we'll scroll down here. And we're going to do the same thing for this parameter. So we'll rename it to cart item. And then here, cart item. And save. And the last thing we'll do is let's scroll up to the add to cart function. So you'll notice that this code manages our cart. So it's actually a best practice to move this function into cart.js because cart.js contains all. Notice that this code manages our cart. So it's actually a best practice to move this function into cart.js because cart.js contains all the code that's related to the cart. A best practice is to group related code together into its own file. So here, let's take the function add to cart. We'll select it and then right click. Cut into this file because this file contains all the code that's related to the cart. So now that this function is inside the file, we need to access it from amazon.js. And we can do that using modules, using the features export and import. So inside cart.js, in front of the function, we're going to export it so we can use it in other files. So let's save this file. And then inside amazon.js, we're going to scroll to the top. And you'll notice that we're already importing something from cart.js. So we actually don't need to write import again. Here, we can actually import import multiple things from this file by typing comma and space and then something else that we want to import. So in our case, we're going to import the function add to cart. So here we'll type comma add to cart. So now it will import both the cart and the add to cart function from this file. So imports can import multiple things from a file. Imports have another syntax, import star as. This imports everything from a file and groups it together inside this object. And then we can access each import as a property or a method.
Hey developers, join us for the biggest AI competition with over $10,000 in cash prizes. Yep, that's right, over.
So lastly, I'm just going to scroll down to my code here, and I'm just going to remove this extra new line and save. Now you might be wondering if we should move update cart quantity into cart.js as well. So this function actually handles updating the web page rather than managing the cart. So we're going to keep this function inside this file for now. So now let's go into Git and save our changes. So we'll go here, and inside cart.js, we moved the add to cart function, and then we exported it. And then inside amazon.js, we imported the add to cart function. And then down here, we took the big block of code that we had before, and we separated it into two functions, add to cart and update cart quantity. And this made our code a lot easier to read. So now let's type a message describing our changes. Move add to cart into cart.js and commit. Next, we're going to create the checkout page in our final project, and we're going to use modules to organize our code again. So let's open the final project, and we're going to click this cart icon in the top right. And this will take us to another page, which is the checkout page. On this page, we can see the products that are in our cart. So if you're wondering how that cart icon works, it basically uses an HTML element called a link element, which looks like this. Link elements have a special attribute called href. When we click a link element, whatever is inside the href attribute, it will open it in the page. So if we put youtube.com inside the href and we click the link, it will open youtube.com in our browser. If we put a file like checkout.html inside href, it will look for a file called checkout.html and open that file. So in our project, if we look at our code and open our files, inside amazon.html, we're basically just using a link element or an a element. And this has an href of checkout.html. So what this does is it's going to look for a file called checkout.html inside it and then open that in our browser, which is how that cart icon works. So in our browser at the top, you can see that it opened checkout.html. So that's basically how a link element works and how we can navigate from one page to another. You can learn more about link elements in my HTML and CSS full course. But for now, we're going to learn how to build the checkout page using JavaScript. So first, let's take a look at the code for this page. So again, the code is inside checkout.html. So in our code editor, we're going to open checkout.html. And this is the code for the page that we saw earlier that contains our cart. So just like with the home page, instead of writing all this HTML manually, we're going to use JavaScript to generate this HTML. So first, we need to add JavaScript to this page. So let's go down to the very bottom here. And right before the end of the body, we're going to create a script element to load some JavaScript. And we'll give it an attribute source equals double quotes, and then a file we want to load. So let's create a new JavaScript file for this page. So inside our scripts folder, let's click amazon.js and then click this icon to create a new file. And let's name this file checkout.js and press enter. And now we're going to load this page inside checkout.html. And then a slash to go into the folder, and then we'll load the file checkout.js. So remember from earlier in the lesson, this attribute enables module features for this file. So now this file can import from other JavaScript files. So now let's save, and let's open checkout.js. And we'll start creating this page with JavaScript. So let's go back to our page first and take a look at the structure of this page. So you can see on this page, we actually have two sections. We have the cart section on the left, which shows the products in our cart. And we also have the payment section on the right, which calculates the cost of our order. So let's use JavaScript to create the cart section first. So remember, the main idea of JavaScript is first, we're going to save the data, and then we're going to generate the HTML. And finally, we'll make it interactive. Let's start by saving the data that we need for this section of the page. So for this section, we're basically displaying a list of products along with the quantity of each product that we want to buy. And if you remember, we already created a data structure to represent this, which is our cart. Inside our cart, we have the ID of the product as well as the quantity that we want to buy. So we can just reuse this data structure to create this section. So let's go into our code, and we're going to open cart.js. So inside here, we have an array called cart that's supposed to represent our data here. So right now, our cart is empty. So to make it easier for us to develop, we're just going to add some default values into this array. So inside here, let's create an object and put one product into our cart first. So looking at this page, the product that we want to put is the socks. So we'll go back into our code, and I'll rearrange my windows so we can see it side by side. And we're going to get the product ID for the socks here. So we're going to go into product.js, and then here's the socks. I'm just going to take this ID, right-click, copy, and then inside the cart. And remember, we structured our data so that each cart item has a product ID as well as a quantity. So here, we're going to create the same structure that our current code uses. So we're going to give each object a product ID, colon, and single quotes. And we're just going to right-click and paste the ID that we copied earlier. And then we'll type a comma, and we'll give it a quantity, colon, and for the first item, we're going to give it a quantity of 2. So we'll just create a cart that kind of matches what we see on this page. Colon, and for the first item, object a as copy.js, and I'll rearrange my windows so we can see it side by side. And the product that we want to put is the socks. So we'll go back into our code, and I'll rearrange my windows so we can see it side by side. And we're going to get the product ID for the socks here. So we're going to go into product.js, and then here's the socks. I'm just going to take this ID, right-click, copy, and then inside the cart, cart. And remember, we structured our data so that each cart item has a product ID as well as a quantity. So here, we're going to create the same structure that our current code uses. So we're going to give each object a product ID, colon, and single quotes. And we're just going to right-click and paste the ID that we copied earlier. And then we'll type a comma, and we'll give it a quantity, colon, and for the first item, we're going to give it a quantity of 2. So we'll just create a cart that kind of matches what we see on this page. Next, let's create a second cart item to represent the basketball. So we'll type comma, curly brackets. We'll give it a product ID, colon, and single quotes. And then we're going to get the ID for this basketball. So inside products.js, we're going to scroll down to the basketball here. And we're going to copy this ID, right-click, copy. And then inside cart.js, in here, right-click, and paste. And we'll give this one a quantity, colon, 1, and save. So what we're doing here is we're just creating some default values that we can use to write the code to generate this page. So this is just for development. When we're actually using the website, the cart will start off as empty. So if we compare our data to our page, you might notice that there's a few things that are missing, such as the product's image, the name, and the price. So how come we're not saving these into our data? And that's because we're using a special technique. We're just saving the product's ID, and then we can use this ID to search for this product inside the products array here. So using the ID, we can find all the other details of the product, like the image, the name, and the price. So there's no need to save this data twice, inside the products array and inside the cart array. All we have to do is save the ID of the product that we want and then search for it. So this technique is called deduplicating the data, or normalizing the data. And this is a very common technique in software engineering.
So do you know, like if you are someone who is trading in market for past 20 years and if there is some guy who is like trading.
Okay, so the one other thing that we probably need to save in our data is the delivery times and the delivery options. But we're going to leave this for the next lesson because it requires some more features that we're going to learn. So for now, we finished saving the data that we need. The next step is to use this data to generate the HTML. So let's open checkout.js. I'm just going to drag it to the bottom here so we can see it side by side. So the first step we need to do is to take the cart array and import it into checkout.js so we can use it. So in here, let's import curly brackets, the cart array. And we're going to import it from single quotes and semicolon. And we're going to use a file path between the quotes to locate cart.js. So let's open our files again. And to get from here to here, we need to go out of the scripts folder. So to do that, we can type ... and then slash to go to the outer folder. And then we're going to go to the data folder. So we'll type data / to go into this folder, and we'll locate cart.js. So cart.js, and save. And next, we're going to loop through this cart and generate the HTML, just like we did for the home page. So let's close this for now. And here, we're going to create a loop over the cart. So we'll type cart.forEach, brackets, and a function. And then we'll give it a parameter. Let's call it cart item. And then for each cart item here, we're going to generate this HTML. So in here, let's create a template string for the HTML using backticks. And we'll create some new lines. And then here, we're going to copy and paste the HTML for one of these products. So first, let's find the HTML for one of these products. And to do that, we can right-click, inspect, and then click this top left icon. And then click the element we want to get the HTML for. So here's the HTML for one of these products. And we're going to search for this class cart item container in our code. So inside our code, let's open checkout.html. And we'll type Control F or Command F to search for code. And we'll search for the class cart-item-container, which is this code right here. So if we collapse it and collapse this, this is the code for these two products here. So we're going to take this HTML and we're going to move it into our JavaScript so we can generate it with JavaScript. So we'll right-click, copy, and then in here, right-click and paste. And if we need to fix the formatting, we can select all of these lines and then press Shift-Tab to remove some indents. And I'll add an indent here.
Hi, Jimmy Pays here with Bitrix 24, a free CRM.
Next, when we're generating this HTML, we want to replace this with the actual product image and this with the actual product's name. So we're going to take this cart item and use it to get the data that we need. So let's open cart.js to see what each cart item looks like. So we have the product ID and the quantity. So first, we need to use this product ID to search for the product in order to get the other details, like the image, the name, and the price. So to do that, let's get the product ID out of the cart item first. So we'll create a variable const product ID equals the cart item dot product ID. And now we need to use this to search for the full product. So the full product, if we open our files, is inside products.js, which is this array right here. So I'm just going to move this up here so we can see it side by side. So to search inside this array, we actually need to import products into checkout.js. So let's use some module features again. At the top, we'll import curly brackets, the products array, and we'll import it from single quotes and semicolon. And then here, we'll locate the products.js file. So we'll type .. to go out of the scripts folder, and then we'll go into the data folder, data, and then a slash to go into this folder, and we'll import from products.js. So products.js, and save. So now we have access to this products array here, and we'll search the array for the full product details. So down here, let's create a variable to save the result. So we'll type let, and we'll name it matching product. And then down here, we'll loop through the products array. So we'll type products dot for each brackets and a function. And then we'll give it a parameter, product. And now for each product here, we're going to check if the ID property is equal to our product ID here. So down here, we'll check if the product.id property is equal to our product ID up here. And then if they're equal, that means we found the matching product, and we're going to save it in this variable. So matching product equals this product that we're looping through. So now that we have the matching product, we have access to the image, the name, as well as the price that we can use to generate this HTML. So this is a good example of deduplicating or normalizing our data. So now at the bottom, let's console.log our matching product to see if it works. So matching product and save. Now if we go into our project and we right click, inspect, and check our console, you can see that we were able to get the full product details for each of these products using the product ID.
I love to take my dog Coco outdoors because I'm always on the go. That's usually when I get somebody's urgent.
So now that we have the full product details, we can use this to generate all this HTML. So down here, instead of generating the same image every time, we're going to use the image in the matching product. So let's get rid of this code. And here, we're going to remove this. And we're going to substitute using $curly brackets, the matching product dot image. And we'll scroll down and instead instead of the same product name every time, we're going to replace this, and we're going to substitute the matching product.name. So each time we're going to generate HTML with a different image and a different name. And down here, the same thing. Remove the price, and we'll replace it with matching product. Product dot, and then we'll just check here what the property is. It's called price cents. And remember, this is in cents, and to display it as dollars, we have to convert it. It by dividing by 100. And instead of 2 every time, we'll substitute. And for the quantity, remember it's not part of a product, it's part of our cart. So each cart item has a property called quantity. So down here, we're going to substitute all this HTML by looping through our dot quantity and save called quantity. So down here, we're going to substitute the cart item dot quantity and save. So now we're generating all this HTML by looping through our cart. So the next step is we're going to combine all this HTML together and then put it on the page. So I'm just going to move this up here so we can see more of the code. So to combine all this HTML together, let's create a variable up here to store the result. So we'll type let, and let's call it the cart summary HTML equals an empty string. And now each time we loop through the cart, we're going to add this HTML up here so that we combine it. So here we'll type cart summary HTML plus equals this HTML that we generated. And at the bottom, I'll just add a semicolon. And then let's console.log the cart summary HTML. Console.log. Cart summary HTML to make sure that it worked. So we'll save. And then in here, we'll check the console, right click, inspect. The console. And now you can see that we generated the HTML, and each cart item is different depending on the product that is being displayed. So that's how we generate all the HTML for this section. And the last step is to take this and put it on the page using the DOM. So first, we need an element that we can put the HTML inside of. To find this element, let's right click, inspect, and click the top left, and click one of these products. And let's find this order summary element because this contains both of our products here. So we're going to replace all the HTML inside here with what we generated. So let's search for the class order summary in our code. So we'll go back to our code, and let's open checkout.html. And we'll type Control F or Command F to search for code, and we'll search for the class order-summary, and then it's right here. And we're going to add a class to search for code. So we'll go back to our code. So we're going to replace all the HTML inside here with what we generated. So let's search for the class order summary in our code. So we'll go back to our code, and let's open checkout.html. And we'll type Control F or Command F to search for code, and we'll search for the class order-summary, and then it's right here. And we're going to add a class so we can select it using the DOM. So js-order-summary, and save. So now let's use the DOM and put this element in our JavaScript. So inside here, at the bottom, we'll use document.querySelector, brackets, and the class we just created, .js-order-summary, and we'll use the property .inner capital HTML, and we'll change the HTML to cart summary HTML. So inside here, at the bottom, we'll use document.querySelector, brackets, and the class we just created, .js-order-summary, and we'll use the property .inner capital HTML, and we'll change the HTML to cart summary HTML.
डिस्टर्बिंग है यार, कितना डिस्टर्बिंग है यार.
And we can remove this line. And now if we save, we're basically generating all this HTML with JavaScript and then putting it on the page. So now we can go back to checkout.html, and we can actually remove the code inside this order summary. So we can delete this code and save, and everything will still work.
भाई मेरे तो समझ से परे हो रहा है लिटरली अब.
Move the code inside this order summary. So we can delete this code.
गाय. हाँ यार, ये क्या प्रॉब्लम हो रही है. यार
And save, and everything will still work because this is now being generated by JavaScript.
भाई मैंने क्या गलत कर
42
दिया
lakhs
है.
per annum.
Wow, 42
Waiting
lakhs,
है
that's
यार.
your salary?
Yes.
And what do you do?
Remove this line. And save. Depending on the product that is. And then let's console.log the cart summary HTML. Console.log cart summary.
Hard summary. कार्ड करा तो है यार। कहाँ फंस गया हूँ, कहाँ फंस गया हूँ। मुझे पता भी नहीं है क्या साला, पता नहीं है क्यों नहीं हो रहा है। एमपी कैसे है भाई? एक सेकंड, मैंने आई थिंक कुछ उसमें यार मेरे संग ही क्यों होता है ये
our
सारे
matching
ड्रामे?
product to see if it works. So matching product and save. Now if we go into our project and we right click, inspect, and check our console, you can see that we were able to get the full product details for each of these products using
Please correct the checkout file. Oh bro, thank God भाई, ये तो मेरे पकड़ में नहीं आता, ये मेरे पकड़ में नहीं आता। आई थिंक आपको हट जाना है भाई, ये मेरे आज पकड़ में नहीं आता भाई। मेरा टाइम बच गया भाई यार, ये तो ठीक लगा है। अरे भाई, ब्लैक हैंड, थैंक यू यार। बट अभी भी तो प्रॉब्लम है। लेकिन लोड क्यों नहीं हो रहा? दिक्कत तो अभी भी कई छूट है हमारी। अभी कहाँ गया यार? यहाँ से हमने गायब करा था, इससे भी वही करा है। क्या भाई, और कुछ बताओ ना, क्या गलत हो रहा है, क्यों नहीं आ रहा है? एक important यहाँ पे
L plus equals this HTML that we generated. And at the bottom, I'll just add a semicolon.
किया है मैंने। भाई अब क्या दिक्कत है यार?
And then let's console.log the cart summary HTML. So .log cart summary HTML to make sure that it worked. So we'll save, and then in here, we'll check the console, right click, inspect.
भाई ये तो यही जनरेट नहीं कर रहा है, मतलब मेरे इसमें प्रॉब्लम आ रही है। क्या प्रॉब्लम आ रही है? कार्ड समरी एचटीएमएल कर तो रखा है भाई। सिंगल करके देखे क्या? अरे बात तो वही होती है। यहाँ पे करके देखते हैं कि एटलीस्ट हमारा जो मैचिंग प्रोडक्ट है वो एटलीस्ट हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है। डॉट लॉग भाई ये भी नहीं हो रहा है, क्या हो रहा है यार? मैंने कहीं नहीं, लेकिन एक सेकंड, नहीं होना तो चाहिए, बट एक सेकंड यार, मैचिंग प्रोडक्ट ठीक है, हमने प्रोडक्ट आईडी कर दिया। हाँ, आर्ट और हमने उसमें चलाया, ले लिया, ठीक है, कार्ड डॉट आईडी को प्रोडक्ट आईडी अगर हमने जो प्रोडक्ट वाला बनाया था ये किया, अगर प्रोडक्ट आईडी इक्वल है प्रोडक्ट आईडी के, तो मैचिंग प्रोडक्ट प्रोडक्ट को इक्वल कर दो। अरे इससे क्या था, लेकिन मुझे नहीं समझ आ रहा क्यों। एक सेकंड, अच्छा हाँ हाँ हाँ, सॉरी सॉरी सॉरी, तो ताकि इस तरीके से क्या हो, मैचिंग प्रोडक्ट में वो जो प्रोडक्ट का, जो प्रोडक्ट ऑब्जेक्ट में जो भी हमने बनाया था ना हर एक का प्रोडक्ट का डिटेल्स वगैरह, वो आ जाए, ठीक है, समझ गया। फिर उससे हमने पॉइंट लगा के समझाया कि अगर हम डायरेक्ट ऐसे करते हैं जैसे कि प्रोडक्ट पे फॉर ईच लगा कर, तो इसमें हम एक कांस्टेंट नहीं रहता, वो हो सकती है, ये क्यों नहीं हो रहा फिर? ये तो होना चाहिए, मतलब मेरे यही कुछ प्रॉब्लम, एक प्रॉब्लम हो सकता है कि हो सकता है हमारा प्रोडक्ट ही है क्योंकि हमने या तो कुछ गलत करा है, कार्ट है, अरे यार कार्ट के साथ एक और भी तो, क्या ढूंढूं भाई, कैसे ढूंढूं?
Of the code. So to combine all this HTML together, let's create a variable up here to store the result. So we'll type let, and let's call it the cart.
प्रोडक्ट है ना, मैंने क्या लिखा, वो सही लिखा है, आई डोंट थिंक, यस तो है भाई, क्या प्रॉब्लम, क्या प्रॉब्लम है? अब कर दिया प्रोडक्ट आईडी, मेरे समझ नहीं आ रहा मैं अब क्या करूं। इसीलिए मैंने ये देख लिया। अमेज़न तो जैसे क्या लेना देना है इससे, और नहीं, प्रोडक्ट है ना, ये भी है। और डॉट ये वाले ये हमने अमेज़न डॉट करा था। मुश्ताक को भाई मैं क्या करूँ? अ, यार चैट जीपीटी तो घंटा नहीं बता पाएगा। यार मेरे को समझ नहीं आ रहा, मैं बीच में फँस गया हूँ, अब मैं कहाँ जाऊँ? यू कैन नॉट रीनेम चाहे अकाउंट फलाना-ढिमाका, कंटिन्यू नहीं कर सकता हूँ। ये देखा, अरे यही होगा यार, मेरे को समझ नहीं आ रहा मैं क्या करूँ? इसको मैं क्या भेजूँ यार? चैट जीपीटी भी क्या करेगा आधे-अधूरे कोड में? भाई यार, क्या यार देखो ऐसे इसका कॉपी क्या करूँगा? एक तो मेरे को इसको यूज़ करना नहीं आता अलग, वो अलग दिक्कत। सही हो गया। अब खाना मैं क्या खाता हूँ? एक सेकंड, इसमें तो कुछ दिक्कत नहीं होगी, तो मैंने छेड़ा ही सिर्फ चेकआउट डॉट एचटीएमएल और अब मेरे को समझ में नहीं आएगा कि मैं कहाँ पे गलती हो, क्या फ़ायदा हुआ मेरा इतना टाइम बैठ के चेकआउट डॉट एचटीएमएल सॉरी स्क्रिप्ट आई होप अब हो जाए यार। गेट नॉट फाउंड क्या होता है भाई? हर बार नॉट फाउंड भाई, मैं कुछ ना कुछ दिक्कत फिर मैं इसमें ना चेक मुझे एक चीज़ समझ में आ गई है कि मेरा कोड मेरा कोड HTML में अबे यार अब क्या मैंने तो सेव कर दिया नहीं ये सेव करके तो कुछ चला ओह आया आया कुछ प्रॉब्लम अब देखो कुछ चीज़ें ये भाई क्या क्या कर रहा है कहाँ पे खत्म कहाँ पे है भाई स्टार्ट आइटम ओह ठीक है अच्छा हाँ मुझे ये समझ में आया कि ये जो हमारा एचटीएमएल हमने इससे तो जावास्क्रिप्ट क्रिएट कर लिया है अब मुझे कुछ चीज़ ये बताओ जब हम ये हमारा ओरिजिनल कोड है तो यहाँ पे सही है नहीं है यार तो फिर क्यों नहीं आ रहा है यार प्रॉब्लम क्या है अबे इसी में कुछ दिक्कत है यार कार्ड समरी कर दिया ठीक है हम्म, ठीक है ठीक है यहाँ पे एक सेकेंड रिमूव फ्रॉम कार्ड अरे नहीं यार ये तो बाद में कर रहा है यहाँ में थोड़ी कर रहा है ठीक है मैं कंसोल डॉट लॉग को हटा दूँ ठीक है मैं डॉट राइट टेन ओके यहाँ पे डिवाइड बाई नहीं है आई डोंट नो व्हाई सेंस में प्राइसिंग था तो आई डोंट नो यहाँ पे नहीं है उसके बाद कार्ट आइटम क्वांटिटी कार्ट आइटम क्वांटिटी के बाद यार इससे मैं कुछ सीख ही रहा हूँ ऐसे भाई एक तो इसको आता है ना इसलिए कर रहे रहा है मेरे को कोई कुछ कुछ कोड ही नहीं पता है हार्ड क्वांटिटी पहले वाले यार ये उस समय थोड़ी था ठीक है मुझे समझ में आ गया ये इससे क्या होगा इससे डिलीट जब हम क्वांटिटी को रिमूव करेंगे तो हर वो उससे हमें मतलब हमें पता लगेगा ना कि बंदा किस उसको क्लिक कर रहा है और किसको वो करना है। तो इसके लिए ये अभी नहीं, ये समय तक नहीं, हाँ, समय तक नहीं, डिलीवरी ऑप्शन ये सब कहीं गया था और फिर यहाँ पे भाई सब तो वही कर रहा है, बट कंसोल डॉट लॉग कार्ड समरी क्यों नहीं होता? तो मन नहीं करता है। ए यार अब मैं क्या करूं यार, क्यों नहीं हो रहा है? इसीलिए छोड़ा था यार, मैंने इसीलिए छोड़ा था। भाई हम कुछ कर भी नहीं पा रहे, क्या करूं मैं, अब यहाँ पे फंस गया हूँ।
Summary HTML equals an empty string. And now each time we loop through the cart, we're going to add this HTML up here so that we combine it. So here we'll type cart summary.
There's something wrong. देखूं यार, पता नहीं क्या कर रहा हूँ मैं अभी। मैं नहीं आ रहा। रीडिंग, भाई ये तो मुझे मेंटल प्रेशर स्ट्रेस देके मार देगा भाई, उम्र से पहले भाई। हट, ट्रेडिंग में अलग स्ट्रेस, इसमें अलग स्ट्रेस लेने बैठो भाई। एक होता है टफ, एक होता है भयंकर बेवकूफ बना। मैं अभी भाई चैट जीपीटी भी क्या ही देगा। क्या लिख रहा हूँ मैं, ऐसे मेरी टाइपिंग। ऑर्डर समरी कुछ प्रॉब्लम क्या हो? मुझे पता है ये सारा उससे चल रहा है, HTML से। जैसे ही मैं हटाऊंगा गायब हो जाएगा। कहाँ गलत, क्या गलत हो रहा है यार? एक मैंने ठीक किया है, ये सब ठीक है, इससे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होना चाहिए। क्योंकि अगर इसमें प्रॉब्लम है तो मेरा कार्ट HTML ये तो एटलीस्ट होना चाहिए, हमारा प्रिंट होना चाहिए, कंसोल लॉग होना चाहिए। ये क्यों नहीं हो रहा है? हम मैचिंग प्रोडक्ट कर रहे हैं, वो नहीं हो रहा है। क्या मैं कहाँ फंस गया? टाइम वेस्ट हो रहा है अलग। एक काम करते हैं हम बढ़िया करके, इसमें हमने क्या क्या चेंजेस किए। और क्या है ये हमने तो, ठीक है, ये है, हमने क्या करा था, इसमें कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, इसमें इसके अकॉर्डिंग हमने तो चेंज और अब क्या 2 चीज़ आ रहा है ब्रो? हाँ, इसमें क्या हुँ, तो आई थिंक अब मैं कहाँ घूमता फिरूँगा यार? अब मैं यहाँ से मैं पूरा डिस्कनेक्ट ही हो गया। मैं अब क्या करूँ भाई? मैं बीच में फँस गया, अब मेरे को समझ में नहीं आ रहा मैं पीछे जाऊँ, आगे जाऊँ, क्या करूँ मैं अभी?
HTML console.log. So we'll save, and then in here, we'll check the console, right-click, inspect the console, and now you can see that we generated the HTML, and each cart item is different depending on the product that is being displayed.
अबे भाई इसका हो रहा है, मेरा क्यों नहीं हो रहा? मेरे में क्या प्रॉब्लम आ रही है? ये तो होना चाहिए ना भाई, सिंपल सा तो कर रखा है मैंने। ये मेल क्यों नहीं हो रहा भाई? सिंपल सी बात है, मैंने इसमें क्या प्रॉब्लम आ रही है भाई? इसमें क्या प्रॉब्लम आ रही है? भाई मैंने लिंक करा है, कम से कम देखूँ तो। पता चला लिंक ही नहीं कर वाओ! लिंक ही नहीं करा मैंने। वेल डन। किया तो था वैसे भाई। अनएक्सपेक्टेड टोकन है। वो पहले से मैं कहाँ ढूँढते फिरूँ यार? भाई मॉड्यूल पढ़ना है। ओके। फेल टू लोड मोड स्क्रिप्ट भाई ये तो पढ़ाया नहीं है मैं। मैं क्या करूँ भाई? मैं क्या करूँ अब यहाँ पे? मैं हेल्पलेस फील कर अकाउंट एंड फ्लोर आईडी, अब मैं इसको कैसे करूँ? Check JS check the JS what is in the path it's being requested. ओके, पता नहीं क्यों ऐसे आह, ओके, ओके, चेकआउट तो वाह! अपने आप से होने लग रहा है भाई। मैं कर भी नहीं रहा हूँ। अब है, इसको यही नहीं मिल रहा। हाँ हो तो गया, 1 सेकंड में अब कैसे मिल गया भाई मेरे? फेल टू लोड रिसोर्सेज। भाई क्या प्रॉब्लम आ रही है, मैं क्या प्रॉब्लम आ रही है? हाँ अरे यार इतना बड़ा लिखा है, इतना पता नहीं बीच में कुछ पॉइंट मिस हो गया। अब ढूंढते फिरो, मैं कहाँ इतने बड़े कोड में, कहाँ कहाँ ये देखो, इतने बड़े बड़े कोड में कहाँ ढूंढते फिरूं मैं? क्या प्रॉब्लम आई है यार? मैं फंस गया हूँ यार बीच में, मेरे को इरिटेटिंग तभी लगता है।
तुम चिल्लाते क्यों हो?
कहाँ फंस गया
चिल्लाने
यार?
से काम
वो
थोड़ी
मैं
हो
बाबा
पाता है।
नहीं हूँ, मैं कोई भगवान नहीं हूँ, मैं
तुम
इंसान
बहुत
हूँ।
चिल्लाते हो,
हाँ
इसलिए
ठीक है,
चीजें
रहने दो
नहीं
मेरे को डिस्टर्ब रह रहा हूँ
थोड़ा
मैं। अभी थोड़ी देर में आना, अभी थोड़ी देर बाद पूजा करिएगा, मैं अभी थोड़ा डिस्टर्ब कर लूँगी। मेरे को अपने में छोड़ा करो, पता नहीं है भाई गॉड, ज्ञान देने सबको इतना आ जाते हैं, जैसे और लोग तो गुस्सा करते ही नहीं हो, हम जैसे आप तो गुस्सा करते नहीं है। Fail to load। भाई कोई बताओ यार क्या प्रॉब्लम आ रही है, हेल्प करो मेरी, जो कोई मुझे देख रहा है। अब मैं क्या करूँ? इमेज वाले नहीं यार, मुझे तो नहीं करना है। कि अगर देखो इमेज का यूआरएल गलत है तो ये तो लोड नहीं होता, लोड कैसे होगा? लो, मेरे में ये तो दिक्कत नहीं आ रही। let's see। भाई कोई रीजन बताओ यार, देख रहा है कोई? means that your project trying to move like path। ओके तो चेकआउट डॉट जेएस लगाया था, उसमें जाओ और डॉट डॉट लगाया, इसमें गए, फिर इसमें हमने ढूंढा डेटा, डेटा के अंदर प्रोडक्ट जेएस यही पाथ है, पार्ट डॉट जेएस प्रोडक्ट डॉट जेएस यही है पाथ ना, सही है आई एम श्योर। पार्ट एग्जिस्ट करता है, प्रोडक्ट करता है using JavaScript module in the browser। yes sir, यह है डबल चेक नॉट मैंने सब चेक तो कर रहा हूँ। भाई अब मैं नहीं करता, हो गया भाई, बट पूरा अच्छा खासा मेरा इतना मन कर रहा था बैठ के पढ़ूं ढंग से, बट अब मेरे को समझ नहीं आ रहा मैं आगे कैसे बढ़ूँ? मैं कहाँ से आगे बढ़ूँ मुझे तो यही नहीं पूरा इसमें वही है, मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा मैं बैक कैसे वापस से बनाऊँ क्या? भाड़ में जाएगा।